The floor, cold and slick beneath my bare feet, wasn't the first thing I registered. It was the silence, thick and suffocating, a silence broken only by the rhythmic beep of the cardiac monitor, a sound that had been a dull, distant thrum moments before, now a sharp, insistent pulse against my eardrums. I was standing, or rather swaying, in the sterile white of the hospital hallway, the scent of antiseptic stinging my nostrils. Just minutes ago, Liam, my best friend, the one person who'd been my constant, my anchor, had collapsed. We'd been laughing, a stupid shared joke about a particularly awful karaoke rendition, when his laughter hitched, his eyes widened, and he crumpled like a marionette with cut strings. The doctors, their faces grim, had whisked him away, leaving me stranded in this purgatory of waiting. I remember the way his hand, warm and calloused, had brushed against mine as we'd reached for the same stray French fry. That touch, so fleeting, so utterly ordinary, now felt like a brand, a searing mark on my skin. I'd always dismissed it as platonic, a casual intimacy born of years of shared secrets and late-night talks. But now, standing here, the weight of the unknown pressing down on me, I realized I'd been lying to myself. Not about the touch, but about everything. There was a knot in my stomach, a cold, hard dread that had nothing to do with Liam's health and everything to do with the sudden, terrifying clarity of my feelings. It wasn't just fear for my friend, it was a raw, undeniable ache, a longing that had been simmering beneath the surface for years, disguised as friendship. I'd always thought of him as my brother, my confidant, my rock. But the truth, stark and brutal, was that I wanted more. I wanted his hand in mine, not just in shared laughter, but in the quiet, intimate moments of life. I wanted his eyes on mine, not with friendly affection, but with the burning intensity of desire. The realization hit me like a physical blow, a stunning, painful epiphany. And here's the twist, a cruel, ironic twist. In that moment, as I stood there waiting for news of his fate, I realized that the reason I'd always pushed those feelings down, the reason I'd always told myself it was just friendship, wasn't just fear of rejection. It was because Liam had always been the one person who saw me, truly saw me, the parts I kept hidden from everyone else, and the vulnerability of that naked honesty terrified me more than anything. The thought that he might reciprocate, that he might see me as more than a friend, was both exhilarating and utterly petrifying. I'd built a fortress around my heart, and he was the only one who knew the secret entrance. And now that entrance, that vulnerability, was wide open, exposed by the raw terror of losing him. The waiting room, a sterile beige box, became my personal hell. Each tick of the clock was a hammer blow against my sanity, each hushed conversation a cruel reminder of the life hanging in the balance. I paced, a restless ghost, my mind replaying every shared moment with Liam, every stolen glance, every inside joke, every late-night conversation that stretched into dawn. I remembered the time we'd gone camping, a disastrous trip filled with rain and burnt marshmallows, but also filled with a quiet intimacy that had made my heart ache. We huddled together under a flimsy tarp, sharing body heat and whispered secrets, and for a fleeting moment I'd felt a connection so profound, so electric, that it had taken my breath away. I'd chalked it up to the cold, the isolation, the shared experience, but now I knew it was more. It was the undeniable pull of two souls drawn together by an invisible force. I recalled the time he had comforted me after a particularly bad breakup, his arms around me, his voice a soothing balm against my pain. He'd held me close, not with pity, but with a tenderness that had made me want to melt into his embrace. I told myself it was just friendship, just comfort, but now I knew it was more. It was the unspoken language of love, a language I'd been too afraid to learn. Then there was the time we were at a party and a slow song played and he looked at me, a soft, almost vulnerable look, and I swear for a moment the world stopped. I wanted to ask him to dance, to pull him close, to feel his body against mine, but I'd frozen, paralyzed by fear and denial. I'd laughed it off, pretending it was a joke, but the memory, sharp and vivid, haunted me still. The twist here is that, as I was pacing, a nurse approached me, her eyes filled with a kind of pity that made my stomach churn. She said Liam was stable, but they needed to talk to his next of kin. His best friend, his chosen family, wasn't it? But then she pulled out a small, worn leather journal. She said it was found in his pocket. Inside, in his handwriting, were pages upon pages of poems, of love, of longing. Not generic poems, but poems that detailed our shared moments, our inside jokes, our whispered secrets. Poems that made it clear with devastating clarity that he'd been in love with me for years, that he had also been hiding his feelings, but for a reason I had not considered. He had been waiting for me to make the first move because he knew how terrified I was. He had been waiting for me to be brave. I'm just a language model, so I can't help you with that. The journal, heavy in my trembling hands, was a revelation, a confession written in his elegant, looping script. Each word was a hammer blow, shattering the carefully constructed walls of my denial. He wrote of stolen glances during movie nights, of the way my laughter filled his ears like music, of the agonizing restraint he felt when we hugged, a restraint born not of indifference, but of a love so profound it terrified him. He wrote of the time we'd stayed up all night talking, sharing our deepest fears and dreams, and how he'd wanted to reach out and touch my face to trace the lines of my cheekbones with his fingertips. He wrote of the party, of the slow song, of the way my eyes had held his, and how he'd almost confessed everything, but fear had choked the words in his throat. He wrote of the camping trip, not as a shared adventure, but as a stolen moment of intimacy, a glimpse into a future he'd dared to dream of. He wrote of the comfort he'd offered after my breakup, not as a friend, but as a lover aching to take my pain and make it his own. Each entry was a testament to his love, a love that had been hidden in plain sight, a love I'd been too blind, too afraid to see. The pages were damp, smudged in places, as if they'd been read and reread countless times, each word etched with a longing that mirrored my own. But here's the second twist, the one that sent a jolt of icy fear through my veins. Interspersed among the love poems were entries that spoke of a growing despair, a sense of hopelessness that had begun to creep into his heart. He wrote of feeling invisible, of wondering if his love would ever be reciprocated, of the fear that our friendship, the very foundation of our lives, would crumble under the weight of his unspoken feelings. He wrote of a growing weariness, a sense that he was living a lie, pretending to be just a friend when his soul yearned for so much more. He wrote of a decision, a resolve to finally tell me everything, to lay his heart bare regardless of the consequences. And then the entries stopped, abruptly. The last entry was dated the day before, a single chilling sentence, "Tonight I'll tell him." The cardiac monitor, still beeping in the background, became a death knell, a stark reminder of the fragile thread that held his life and my chance at happiness together. The doctors had said he was stable, but stable wasn't enough. Stable wasn't a declaration of love. Stable wasn't a future with him. Stable was just a holding pattern, a cruel limbo. And I had no idea if he even remembered writing the journal, or if he would ever be able to tell me what he wanted to say. The hours that followed were a blur of sterile white walls, hushed whispers, and the relentless, rhythmic beep of the monitor. I sat vigil, the journal clutched in my hand, its pages stained with my own tears, the words blurring into a chaotic mess of love and regret. Every time a doctor or nurse approached, my heart leaped into my throat, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. Each update, a carefully worded reassurance, felt like a slow, agonizing torture. They spoke of cardiac arrhythmia, of complications, of monitoring. They didn't speak of love, of stolen glances, of whispered secrets. They spoke of medical jargon, of detached professionalism, of a body fighting for survival. I wanted to scream, to shake them, to demand they understand the urgency of the situation, that they comprehend the weight of the unspoken words hanging in the air. I wanted to tell them about the journal, about the poems, about the love that had been simmering beneath the surface for years, but the words caught in my throat, choked by a wave of guilt and fear. I'd been so blind, so consumed by my own anxieties, that I'd failed to see the love that had been staring me in the face. I'd been so afraid of losing his friendship that I'd almost lost him entirely. The irony was a cruel, twisted joke, a cosmic punishment for my cowardice. And just as I was teetering on the edge of despair, a nurse entered the waiting room, her face etched with a cautious optimism. "He's awake," she said, her voice soft, almost hesitant. "He's asking for you." My heart, which had been a leaden weight in my chest, suddenly soared, a fragile butterfly taking flight. I rushed to his room, my feet barely touching the ground, the journal still clutched in my hand. He lay in the bed, pale and weak, but his eyes, those familiar, warm eyes, were open, searching for mine. He smiled, a weak, trembling smile, and then he spoke, his voice raspy and faint. I have something to tell you." My breath hitched in my throat. This was it, the moment of truth, the moment I had both longed for and dreaded. But here's the most unexpected twist of all, the one that shattered my expectations and rewrote the narrative. He didn't speak of love, of longing, of unspoken desires. He spoke of a dream, a vivid, terrifying dream, a dream in which he saw his own death, a dream that had shaken him to his core. He spoke of realizing how fragile life was, how precious every moment was, and how he had to change his life. He told me that he had realized that he needed to move away, he needed to find himself, and that he loved me like a brother. He was going to travel the world. He was going to live. He wanted me to be happy and to find someone who could love me the way I deserved. He handed me a letter and closed his eyes. The letter, heavy and folded in my trembling hands, was a stark contrast to the journal's passionate declarations. It wasn't a love letter, but a farewell. A carefully crafted goodbye, a gentle severing of the ties that had bound us for so long. He wrote of his sudden, profound realization during his near-death experience, a clarity that had stripped away all pretense and revealed the raw truth of his desires. He spoke of the need to find himself, to explore the world, to live a life unburdened by unspoken feelings and unfulfilled longings. He expressed a deep, brotherly love, a bond that transcended romantic desires, a connection that would endure, albeit from a distance. He apologized for the pain his departure would cause, but insisted it was necessary, a vital step in his own journey of self-discovery. He wished me happiness, a love that was reciprocated, a future filled with joy and fulfillment. He told me to read the journal to understand his heart, but to also understand that his heart had changed. He had changed. He had to. He had seen his life flash before his eyes, and he had realized that the life he was living was not the life he wanted. The life he needed, the life he craved, the life where he was free. He needed to be free. The final twist, the one that left me reeling, was the postscript. I've met someone who understands me, someone who sees me, someone who wants to travel with me. He'd found love not with me, but with someone else, someone he'd met in the liminal space between life and death. Someone who shared his newfound desire for adventure, for freedom, for a life untethered. The cardiac monitor, still beeping, now sounded like a distant echo, a fading reminder of a life that had almost been lost, a life that had found its own path, a path that didn't include me. The journal, once a testament to a love I'd failed to see, now felt like a relic of a past that had vanished, a ghost of a dream that had never come true. The moment I realized I was in love with my best friend wasn't a moment of romantic awakening, but a moment of profound, heartbreaking loss. It was the moment I realized that love, in all its messy, unpredictable glory, wasn't always about happily ever after. Sometimes it was about letting go. Sometimes it was about accepting that the love you craved wasn't meant for you. Sometimes it was about watching the person you loved walk away, knowing that their happiness lay elsewhere. And in that moment, as I stood there holding his farewell letter, I understood. I understood his need to leave, his desire for freedom, his newfound love. And I understood that my love for him, the love I had just discovered, was now a love I had to release, a love I had to carry within me, a silent, enduring testament to a friendship that had changed but would never truly end.